just come forward and answer the question. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 1 out of 3 children in America live in biologically father-absent homes. In 2011, 44% of children in mother-only families were living in poverty. The question is, why do you think the lack of a father in a home puts a woman and children in such vulnerable and economically disadvantaged position?
Well, just we have to look at it on different lines. One of the lines that we can discuss is the fact that the economic reality right now is if you're not making a certain income, and I believe in New York City they had a report saying if you're not making over $200,000 and you're not middle class. The economic reality is that you need 2 incomes to be able to sustain just a decent quality of life, especially in New York City, and I know Long Island is raising up also with the taxes. A second reality is the man is placed in the household, especially since we were talking about from faith, as the protector and the provider in a home, but not just to provide financial needs, but provide a sense of confidence, a sense of security. So when you take the man out of the household, especially in urban areas or minority areas or areas that are low income, then there is an opportunity for a lot of other things to set in. So where you have a mother working a 9 to 5 and a 6 to 2 just to make ends meet, and their child is now vulnerable to the streets, especially if we're looking at the 7 o'clock hour, which is a new witching hour. At that point in time when parents are transitioning between jobs or when parents are on their way back home from jobs, their children are left out in the street. So with that, all of these elements come together to be like a perfect storm or a perfect negative storm to families that should have more stability. That goes to when our host was just saying about the fact that we need that stability in our homes. All of these things detract from it. Now, it also speaks to the point where a lot of men need to be in the households. You don't need to be the biological father to be a father figure. And that's something that we keep pushing in my community over and over again. Anytime I have a town hall, we have a bunch of men that jump up and say, you know, there's no jobs in the community. Well, if nobody's working, how come there's nobody at the PTA meetings? How come there's nobody helping the household with the families and sons and daughters? You know, if you're not at work, and you should be using that time to do something else that adds to a quality of stability for that family.
Very good. Would you see a way to tell single mothers how do you break out of the poverty cycle?
Well, what we did, we started a nonprofit called New York for Life. And what that not-for-profit did was, we started it as doing a luncheon for single mothers. And we average about 400 single mothers every year. What we do is we bring in organizations from the outside. So there's a lot of daycare providers that nobody knows about that provide free or low-cost daycare. There are health providers that a lot of people don't really understand, or community-based organizations. We have OST, out-of-school time providers. We have beacon programs. So we bring them in and we try to couple the right organizations with the families. And every time we do that, we get single mothers that actually benefit from that. And then they want to volunteer. And it just becomes like a support group, which is really supposed to be an extended family in our community. So that's how we've been doing it. And then we have other programs. I've been really fortunate enough to be able to be attached to city government. So CUNY has a program called ASAP. And what this program does is if you are at a below certain income level, they have a certain amount of jobs that bring you immediately above the 45,000 income threshold. So they will put you into a 2-year associate's program, get you financial aid and everything, and make sure that you graduate and get a job. So you might be making $30,000 a year. Well, he's a prophet in my church too. So you might be making $30,000 a year, $35,000 a year, or $20,000 a year for 7 years. So what they're saying is take this 2 years, invest in yourself, and then we'll make sure that you'll be making 45, so it brings you up to out of the poverty level, and then it begins to increase your capacity to take care of your family.
So there is hope.
Yes.
You gave hope.
Yes.
You don't have to stay in the cycle and stay in poverty. Let's move on to another question. What scars, if any, do you think the lack of a father leaves on a girl or a woman?
So I'll take that one on. I am the product of a single parent household, and just recently started a family developed a marriage, I guess, appetite for marriage, and I hate to use that word. That word reconciliation, that hit home with me so much, you just don't know. And to be honest, I think you have insecurity feelings, going back to security. There are trust issues. You don't have the opportunity to really develop the foundation for a relationship with males. And I had an excellent role model in my grandfather. Luckily, my mom had that community support that you talk about, and it was right there in her own family, in her own neighborhood. But to be honest, relationships just wasn't interested in them, wasn't invested in them, didn't open myself up to them until late in life. So I think you have to reach a point where you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, much like LaShawn said in the video, I put that in a box over to the side, didn't want to deal with it, didn't want to accept it, and said I didn't need him, but I needed him. I still need him. So reconciliation is still very true. And it's interesting, my husband and I talk about that and how those trust issues, those insecurity issues had to all be sorted out for us to have the family that we have now.
Now, I want to just tag on to that a little bit. How do you feel now? How can you avoid bringing the daddy issues into a marriage or relationship when a father has not been present in the home?
I don't know if anyone else does this, but do you ever find yourself watching those successful father-daughter relationships?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a daughter in the house. She's my stepdaughter, but she's my daughter. And I watch, and it's interesting, I have a little bit of an out-of-body experience watching them. And I'm so excited, yet some part of me feels like, gee, I missed out. I really missed out. This is who she runs to. I don't run and hug and jump in anybody's arms like she does that. And I love this man. I love who he is as a dad. It's one of the reasons why I fell in love with him. I think it's a process of growth. Reconciliation is a process. It starts, and it can be slow for some, and I feel like that's going to be my challenge. Because my father, we haven't figured it out yet. And I keep telling him, I don't need you to be a father, I need you to be a friend, but maybe I'm in denial. And I do need him to be as much of a father as I do a friend. So I think it's a slow process. It's one day at a time. It's a lot of prayer. It's a lot of conversation. And those honest feelings, you can't walk away judgmental or hurt, unconditional. You have to be willing to hear how much pain that is, and you got to talk about it. And then whoever you're in a partnership with, they have to really know your struggle and your story, which means you got to be honest about how you feel today, how you felt yesterday, and in that song, how you hope to feel tomorrow.
Councilman?
You know, I don't know how I keep getting found for these types of symposiums. And I told them that when we saw them in the park. Like, I have a similar story to yours, but mine's on the flip side, right? So I didn't know I had a daughter until she was 12, and did not meet her until she was 14 or 15. And the issue with mine was, and it was publicized all over the newspapers. I mean, he can tell you, because I was in church praying and crying. As soon as I ran for office, all of a sudden it was on every newspaper, I was a deadbeat dad and this and the other stuff. And none of that was true, but the damage that it did to the relationship, right, caused a good, what man means for evil, God means for good, right? So God uses for good. So what that did was, it threw us together into a point where we had to compress 15, 16 years into 1 year with everybody in the world looking at us like we were in a fishbowl, and everybody in the world saying something. And what it did was, it forced us to deal with the realities of our relationships and how we felt in something that wasn't an amount of time that other people would have. So when you have a good extended amount, we had to do it right away. And what we found out was, there was a lot of fears and apprehensions I had going into a relationship now, to be involved with a young lady whose perceptions were already formed, right? She had already been with her mother. She had already been told, not by her mother, but by family and different people. She had already seen things. So we had to deal with that, and then I had to deal with the portions of me not having a stable father, and how in the world was I going to be able to be a good father? I had nothing, I knew nothing. me getting married. My wife didn't find out that I had this child because we were notified the day before we were getting married. So she didn't have the opportunity. She's just like God, angel person, right? So she just said, we're just gonna take this daughter on and just raise her like you did. So we have to, and the women have to begin to start, the young girls have to begin to start to think, understand that this is a two-way collision.
Yes.
And that's what it is. It's an emotional collision. So that it's not just feelings of insecurity and inadequacies and abandonment, but the men we have a lot of things that we're dealing with also, right? So I missed that, my daughter running up to me. I missed the first steps. I missed her talking. I missed, messing up her hair because I don't know how to do hair, especially, you know what I'm saying? So now it's to a point where me and my wife are looking to adopt, and all I want is a little girl. Like, everywhere I go, I see like these incredible, intelligent, beautiful young ladies that are just running around all the time, and I'm saying hello, and they're saying hi, and they're waving like little princesses, and how do they, so we have all these emotions, and then we have this resentment also, like we were forced to miss this, and there's different issues that are going on. So anybody who is dealing with that, use what I'm going through as a testimony to say that there's something that good can come out of it, but please don't always throw up a wall to him. When we make mistakes, it's because we don't know any better. We're understanding how to take care of this child at that point in time. So we're learning, and we want to learn. But every time something happens, it makes us draw back a little bit also. And you said, what do? You need to grab the source of your faith. Like I have Jesus, but I have a strong bishop. Bishop Cox is incredible. So I used to go there and just sit there and cry. And then I would leave there resenting that I cried because I felt like a little girl for crying. So if you don't have a strong male figure that's a mentor in your life to tell you, no, it's okay, don't worry about it. You're not the devil. It's not something that happened, that you can control. Then you'll really have more frustration than what I've dealt with. So those are the things that you really need to do. Understanding it's a two-way street. He's not perfect. He's going to make mistakes. But as long as he has a willingness to correct that, then you'll have a great relationship later on.
Back off of what Ruben is saying, my situation is a little bit of both. I have 3 daughters. I have 6 girls. 3 biological, and then a tragedy of divorce, and then getting remarried, and then my wife having 3. And so it's the dichotomy of breaking away from the relationship of raising them, growing them, doing homework with them, braiding their hair, embarrassing them, making a mess, taking them to school, taking them to the park, and then at some point it breaks off, and you question yourself, you question the dynamics of the situation, what took place, what happened, but in the midst of it not being there, you still have an arm or hand extended, trying to continue what was once there. And then at the same time, you're starting a new relationship with new girls and trying to build and not see them the way you saw your own, but understanding that they still need that relationship. And there's something that really troubles me with the new relationship is that they had a dad in the house, but he was not in the house. You had a visible father, but an invisible presence. And with that being there, they grew with the understanding that fatherhood for them was seeing mom everywhere, seeing mom doing everything, and dad would come in for dinner and then retreat to his room. And not understanding that that was dysfunctional, but for them it was functional. And then when they went to their friends' houses at the age of 5 and 6 and seeing other dads operate differently, they were wondering, well, what's wrong with my home? And maybe my home is a little special, maybe we do things just differently, maybe it's a cultural thing. So coming into that relationship, I understood I had to do some damage control. I had to bridge the gaps that were unbridged. I had to build continuity, trust, to helping them understand what a father's role is, and then helping them to alleviate any stress or burdens or even any anxieties they had about having a male in the home that was close enough that, yes, he's going to take you to the store. Yes, he's going to take you out. Yes, he's going to do it, and it's not going to be mommy anymore. So there's a great need for homes where the father was there, it's not there anymore, and even when the father was there, he really wasn't there. The scars that some of the young ladies carry are scars that are not always visible. And these scars begin to eat on them from the inside out. And we see we glimpse at these scars in terms of how they come out in terms of their behavior, their conduct in school, the type of boys they gravitate to, the things they do online, on public media. And we want to label them, not understanding that they're just responding to the scars that were inflicted upon them unbeknownst to them. So we need to begin to bring them in, draw them in, and again, these scars are numerous, but the good thing about a scar is that it can always heal.
Amen.